Hello, this is another, you kind of have to ask the question. This is Parshas Bo. And at the end of the Parsha, there's a lot of stuff in this Parsha, but at the end of the Parsha, we have two Parshios that are actually the same Parshios that are in the Tefillin, right? The first two out of the four Parshios in Tefillin are from the Kriya Shema and V'Hafta and V'Haya and Shemoah. And then the last two in the Tefillin are in this week's Parsha. It's Perek Gimel, and the Parsha is Kaddish Likol Bechor, right? Peter Kol Rechem, Ben Yisrael, etc. And then the second one begins a few psukim later, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, it says, "V'haya ki yaviyacha el eretz Knani asher kasher nishbata lecha l'avasecha v'nasata lecha." You come into the land that Hashem gave you. And it also says Kol Peter Rechem. And the reason why they're in the tefillin is because they have a mention. It has a mention of has a mention of tefillin in it, right? So it says in the first one that after it talks about the bechoros, and it talks about that you're going to make a korban pesach, etc., and it says you will. V'haya lecha la'os al yadcha. It'll be a os on your hand. U'lezicharon lebeininecha, and a remembrance between your eyes, as pasuk tes. In order that we should have the Torah in our mouths, etc. Right. Then, however, interesting and the second parsha, when it mentions the tefillin, it says it the following way. It says that the tefillin will be Haya la'os al yadcha, it will be an os on your hand, u'letotafos beinenecha, and a totafos between your eyes, ki chazek yad Hashem hotzi, ki, because Hashem took hotzias me'eretz Mitzrayim, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. So therefore, there's a difference in the language. One, it says zicharon beinenecha, and over here it says totafos beinenecha. Another interesting difference between the two parshios is that if you read the parsha carefully, you notice that the first pasuk it talks about the mitzvah of Pesach and Korban Pesach, and that you're going to do this, and you're going to and you're going to bring Korban Pesach, and part of the mitzvah of Korban Pesach is you're going to tell your children that you're going to take them out of Mitzrayim. However, in the second parsha, and it doesn't mention anything about Makos Bechoros, which is the reason that why the Bechorim are Kodesh is because Hashem saved the Bechorim of Klal Yisrael and killed the Mitzrayim, and therefore there's no mention of that in the first parsha. The second parsha talks almost exclusively that you're going to go and mekadesh all the Peter Rechem in Eretz Yisrael whenever they're born, and all of a sudden your children are going to turn to you and say, "Hey, what's going on over there?" They're saying, "What's going on over here?" Mazos, which is right, and you'll say, "B'chozek yad hotzi Hashem Mitzrayim," and he took us out. And then you go, and the parsha goes on to explain that Paro it hardened his heart; he didn't want to sell him, and that God killed all the Bechorim in Mitzrayim from the Bechor Adam ad Bechor Behema, and therefore, Ani Zoveach LaHashem Kol Peter Rechem B'Zacharim V'Kol Bechor Banai Tifta, and therefore there's a connection to now taking. There's this mitzvah of Bechoros in Klal Yisrael because Hashem killed the Bechorim. So in the second parsha, when it goes over, it doesn't mention anything about Korban Pesach, but it does mention this idea of the Makos Bechoros, that's the vis-a-vis, the quid pro quo, so to speak, is why we have the Bechorim. And in the first parsha, it talks about Ba'avor Zeh, because of this, because of the Korban Pesach, that's why we went out of Mitzrayim, and that's what I'm doing over here, and the Korban Pesach, and over there you have to initiate the conversation because it says, Agada Telabilka, you can tell your son. In the second parsha, you're just going to be doing your you're going to be doing the Bechoros, and your children are going to look and say, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you doing this?" Okay? So those are the basic questions over here that the parsha seems to be talking about two different stories. And they're telling two different reasons for the Bechoros, right? So what's going on? What's possibly going on? So it's possible to say that the two parshas are talking to two different people. The first parsha, if you think about it, is really talking to the people who left Mitzrayim and went into Eretz Yisrael, the people who experienced the mitzvah, and therefore they celebrate. They offer the korban pesach, and they tell why they're making such a big to do. They're excited by it, and they say, "Ba'avor zeh, because of this, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim, and therefore I'm giving to Hashem, my firstborn. The firstborn, it has to be poda, and the bechoros of the animals have to be given, and if it's a petarechem of the donkey, then we have to be poda and take that money." So, meaning, it's all because this is what's happening to me, and therefore I'm doing that. And in that, what do we do as a sign of a constant remember? So we tie an os on our hands. I'm sorry, I'm left-handed, that's why I'm going here. It's really, so, right? It's really goes over here for most people. So, right? And also, and a zicharon, a remembrance, is a reminder to us that the tefillin are there. However, what is the second parsha talking about? It talks about when we're in Eretz Yisrael already for a couple of years, for a many year generation already, and therefore every year, for some reason, we're taking the best of our animals and saying, "Wait a second, this is not for me; it's for God." And children say, "Hey, this is good money. Why are you giving that? Why do you have to give that to God? Why do you have to? What do you have to do over here? What's this?" And that we say, no. There's a special relationship between us and God because Hashem saved us. And not only saved us because He sent us out of Egypt and He killed the Bechorim in lieu of that because we should have been killed. He killed the Bechorim, and therefore we now have that thing that Hashem almost owns the Bechorim, that the relationship is there, and that this is continuing on, and that Hashem protects us, and He took us out of Egypt, He brought us to Mitzrayim, and He conquered the land, and we have that. And that's why it's not because of the korban pesach, which is, it's not necessarily because of it's because there's a special thing that Hashem saved us. And over there, when we're looking about making an os, we call it a teferes, a totafos, right? Which they say from the pasuk in Tehillim, that it says when the nations of the world are going to look at you and be afraid of you, be fearful of you, be in awe of you. What does that mean? They say that's the Eila, the tefillin shel barosh. That's the tefillin that goes on top of your head, the one that the world sees. That is going to be a sign to the whole world is that Hashem has a special protection of us, and that He's going to take care of us, and that's what it means over here. So the first parsha, Kaddish Likol Bechor, is talking to the people who went out of Mitzrayim, the people who understand all that, and they know and they see where the relationship. But the second parsha, which begins, right, which begins, it talks about, you see, the whole nature of that is that it talks about when you went into the land of Canaan, and the way I swore to you. So therefore, those are the differences in the parshios and what the nature is and who is it talking to. And therefore, you should remember that when you put on your tefillin, not only is it a zicharon for yourself to remember, about Avor Zeh that Hashem did for me, but it's also that Hashem is now. It's a totafos for the whole world to see that Hashem has this relationship with us, and therefore that we are under a different thing. Hopefully it's a good Shabbos. Hopefully it's a little clear. If you're not, you can text me and we'll discuss it further.